Hi guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Just one weekend into the Major 3 qualifiers and already we are starting to see some roster changes come through. Rumour has it Vegas Legion have pulled the trigger. The Purj Asim redemption arc has come to a conclusion. He is gone. Asim, after his recent stint on the Boston Breach, is going to be into the Vegas Legion team from now to the end of the season. If, of course, this works out well. Is this a good move? Is it potentially friendship-related cheat? Or is it a straight upgrade for this Legion roster that's on the verge of being a serious contender with the top dogs? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. First of all, this was quite a remarkable thing that Trek said yesterday. They will be evaluating, well, they're doing what they call weapon evaluation, where there are certain weapons that were GA'd by the pros in the early part of the game and therefore were banned in the official rule set that are now going to be allowed in ranked play for a few days. This, I think, is going to go for about a week until something like April the 23rd before they either revert some of this or we'll see what they do. Now, Trek did say in their post they made about it, well, based on your feedback and your evaluation and what we see in the data, that is going to decide what ends up being in the CDL rule set to some degree. The reality is it doesn't because the pros decide, and I don't think they're going to be changing their minds on what they use. But it would be very interesting if some of this stuff, if it isn't really that overpowered, remains in ranked, and therefore the pros, you know, if the rule set officially changes to accommodate for that, then theoretically the pros could start to use some of this stuff. Now, the BP50 is very good. The Holger actually is the one that even stands out a bit to me just because that was the weapon that right at the start of the game was dominating the meta, and the pros actually GA'd a lot of ARs to get to the MCW. The MTZ was one of them. That's now back as well. So yeah, starting today, all of these weapons, including the HRO and the Ram 9, which is a very viable SMG, I think at least, or, you know, it was tried, wasn't it? The pros tried it out, and then they decided, no, we prefer the 2-weapon meta, we're going to go back to the rifle and the MCW. And there was even an argument recently to say that, well, if the SMG now is too strong, which I don't think it is, but let's say the rifle is too strong, then what about if the AR players decided, all right, instead of using the MCW all the time, we'll look at some of the alternatives? And, well, that may be coming to fruition. So we'll see how this goes. As Gunner says, I just saw a pro sub player drop to his knees in a Walmart parking lot after seeing this because, yeah, with these weapons now back in play, if Treyarch were to say, all right, yeah, based on the data, the Holger is not performing at anywhere, you know, it's not performing at a level above the MCW, maybe the BP50 is, who knows, but if they were to make a change to the official rule set, then some pro players could start to use them. Now, there probably would be GA'd, but it's not potentially stopping teams from breaking GAs, because we know that certain teams at some point in this season have broken various gentlemen's agreements, and will likely continue to do so. So would it stop a team saying, all right, well, the Holger now is officially back in the rule set, maybe I'll put it out map 1 of the World Championship, and that would be rather dramatic if it was to occur. Now, we've got to talk about some of this Rostermania stuff, because really where this kicks off yesterday with regard to Vegas Legion is here from Exceed, about to start forcing out Force to sign our Force, I think that's meant to say, to sign a contract to give us 5% so we can get some Scoobies. Actually, yeah, he confirms that in replies. So, what he means here is, Exceed is on the FaZe back team, he's obviously been in the Pro League, out of the Pro League, and he was, you know, talked about quite a lot recently, because he was making the point that he hasn't got a fair shot back in the league. Scrappy was saying, brother, get good, basically, and then you'll get back into the league. But he's one of those players that was on the FaZe back team that was not brought up to the Pro League at some point earlier in the season, right? You guys remember when they won the first event, it was Exceed, Brack, Asim, and Kremp, right? And then Kremp was signed to Thieves, Asim was signed to Boston, which didn't last especially long. The other guys, maybe surprisingly, and maybe unsurprisingly, didn't get their opportunity. One thing I wanted to mention as well is that Los Angeles Grillers are putting more effort in to Flames' happy birthday celebration for yesterday than actually giving this guy a go in the roster. And I do wonder whether this Vegas change is going to be a bit of a catalyst for other teams, especially if it works for them. I am surprised by some of the timing around these changes, but it's not the first time this season we have seen changes made during a qualifier stint. Ravens did the same thing back in Major 1 when they dropped GodRx and they brought in T to Real shortly before the Major. So, you know, theoretically it's possible, as it clearly is possible as we're going to discuss in the coming minutes, to make changes now, and maybe Guerrillas will see other teams mixing things up and try something, because LAG, they've come top 6 at the first 2 LAN events. Do I expect them to come top 6 for the next 2 LAN events? No. and therefore their spot at the World Championship is very much in jeopardy. They have 90 points right now, which honestly isn't that bad. The cutoff right now is 80, so they are in position to still make the World Championship. But if they keep getting slammed online, they're just going to squander that opportunity. So I think there's a chance to put Flames in the team now, at least try it, because if they continue on this trajectory, they're probably not going to get top 6 the next couple of LAN events, and if they don't, they're probably not going to make the World Championship with their online struggles they're currently having. But we've got to lean this conversation towards Asim and the FaZe back, but of course now he's going to be on the Vegas Legion. So Asim was then back on FaZe back, and this is what Exceed is getting at, that yeah, Asim comes back in, and now he's gone again, and like, you know, can we not get a cut of this? So Boston Breach, they made the very controversial move, getting rid of Asim and Slasher. As far as I'm concerned, either move can be justified in certain ways. I wouldn't have got rid of both of them. I think you lose too much. And of course, after the first series that Boston played, since dropping those guys, they lost in a Game 5 to Miami Heretics. Asim tweeted this out, and we'll see in due course whether that Boston decision is good or bad. I think some elements of it I don't mind, some elements of it I'm not so sure they've made the correct decisions, but of course Asim tweeting this out is kind of saying, look, drop me, this is what you get type thing, and maybe if I get back into the league at some point, we're going to see something happen, and that now, it seems, is basically happening. Multiple sources confirmed to Breaking Point last night that Asim will be, now it's described here as stepping in for Purj, but my understanding is this is a done deal, this is a full-time change, and Purj is gone, and Asim is into the Vegas Legion starting roster. So this has been a big conversation now for some time. Purj was getting slammed at the start of the season, but during Major 2, when Vegas did have an easier schedule, that's got to be said, but Purj started to turn up, right? He played better during that stage, dropped some better numbers online for sure, and the Search and Destroy, there was talk about his leadership characteristics as well, being a, you know, communication-heavy player, and actually helping out the team a fair bit, and being, you know, the piece they needed, because the rest of the guys, Attach and Nero and Geo, were all slaying out at their times. Purj wasn't going to do that, but he was going to do, it seems, what was necessary elsewhere. However, this is one of those cases where a straight upgrade in that exact role that I'm mentioning is seemingly now possible, and, well, they've tried to execute upon it. So Purj will go down to challenges. He's actually going apparently by purging, or that's what Ad says here. I think just leave it at Purj is fine, to be honest. But yeah, joining FaZe Black, replacing Asim. So Asim gone, Brack, Exceed, Purj, and Rex. Now that's the new FaZe Black roster with Purj, or with Asim, sorry, up to the Vegas Legion starting team. So the question really is, looking at this roster, is this a valid upgrade to try and make, right? Because Attach, Geo, Nero have all had their top moments. Purj has always been the man that's been looked at as the weak link of the team. His numbers over the course of the season, not great at all. The rest of the guys are. Standy, of course, was dropped for Geo a little while ago. If we just look at Major 2, though, for example, bit of a different story. Purj had a 0.95. So definitely played better during that stage, as Hardpoint was at a 0.94, Search was at a 0.92, and then Control was at a 0.98. So look, still, his respawn prowess isn't really there, and in terms of kills per 10 and other factors, it's not really there. But, you know, they were telling us, Vegas, that Purj was an important piece from the out-of-game stuff and some of the communication, but I do think that you guys might remember the play. They turn up to Major 2. They probably should have got top 6. They really needed to get top 6. They go to that round 11. Purj makes that criminally poor play on the invasion search. He goes down. The team goes down. They bottle it. And honestly, I wondered if it was in that moment when they were going to, you know, come to the decision that, yeah, Purj is going to go. Vegas are going to go in a different direction. But I think I'm somewhat surprised here by the timing, right? Just because they could have made this move after Major 2. They possibly should have done, and yet they've, you know, bid their time for a few more days, and now they're executing a move that is definitely a good move, but it does mean that there's maybe a couple of targets that aren't on the market any longer. Like 04, for example, who's gone to Surge. They could have probably got him if they wanted to, had they have made the change after Major 2. It's like, to me, it's a little bit confusing that if you are going to make this move, why not just make it immediately after Major 2? Because at that time, it was very clearly known that Asim was going to be gone. Like, they could have done this move before their most recent weekends. And sure, they did okay this week. They went 1-1, beating Gorillas and then going down in a Game 5 to the Thieves. But I think maybe it was that map 1 where Purj dropped 7 and they got 50 point clubbed on the 6-star. That maybe just tipped the balance to say, you know what, this lack of slaying on a consistent basis is going to cost us, and it's time for Purj to go. And I think that in terms of many of the attributes, Asim is a player that can do a similar job to Purj on the Vegas team, but should be able to do it at a high level. Like, if you look at Asim's numbers, sure, his KD is actually pretty similar to Purj this season, which is maybe not what you want, but his Slayer rating is much higher. He's a faster player, gets more kills per 10 minutes, absolutely. I suppose in terms of objective, though, there are questions on this, because if you look at the Vegas team, Purj was doing a fair bit of the objective work. That's not going to be the case. Well, it could be the case with Asim, but he hasn't been that player recently. Purj and Nero doing lots of, you know, the hill time for 10 minutes or whatever, whereas Asim wasn't really doing that on the teams. Now, can he change his role? Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if he, you know, comes away successfully for it. And look, Purj has had a difficult season, showed signs of improvement, I think, as Octane says. But when it came, you know, push comes to shove, Purj didn't really deliver what they needed. Because if you want to be a serious contender, you can't just have 3 players, of which 2 are probably going to play well each and every series you play. Usually it's Attach and Nero and Geo, and, you know, they kind of mix it up between who's slaying out and who's not. Nero's sometimes on, sometimes he's off, but the team has been pretty good on the whole. The problem is, what's your intention? Are you a team that's trying to just make it to the World Championship and get top 8 and, you know, be respectable, which isn't the worst thing in the world, especially with the way the league is currently structured? But I'm always in favour of trying to get better. You know, like right now, they're not even the 5th best team, which is kind of what you're aiming for at the bare minimum. Thieves have beaten them twice recently, so, you know, if anyone's at 5th best, you've probably got to say it's those guys at the moment. But if you want to actually go one step further, you've got to get better in Search and Destroy. And I'm not saying Asim Search has been great either, because let's be honest, it straight up hasn't. Like, Asim Search and Destroy has been pretty woeful, to be honest, this season. But will he have a bit more ice in a Game 5 than Purj will? Probably yes. Will he have a little bit more of a leadership element than Purj does? You know, comms, these other elements. You know, a winning mentality, winning mindset, player that has won events in the past. I think it makes a lot of sense. So for like a head-to-head straight-up transition, I think they are making probably an intelligent move. Like, I don't think Asim is a phenomenal player, and I think the numbers play that out. I think he's a solid player that is typically on teams in the 6th through 10th range, maybe sometimes lower, sometimes rarely higher, something like that. Solid player for sure. Is he better than Purj though? Yeah, I would say on paper this is an upgrade. Would I have looked at alternatives? Like, would I have thought of a guy like Hixie could be a good candidate as well? Sure, but, you know, visas, other things, probably not. Of course, one of the discussions is, yeah, unlucky for Purj, but I always will commend the intention of trying to be as good of a roster as you can be. But of course, other people will say, well, you know, after the flank friendship cheese, whatever you want to say, and the defensive Asim that happened, for understandable reasons after the fact, to be honest, but did Zuma whisper something and attaches it? We know that Attach and Zuma, you know, top duo, great boys. And maybe there was a conversation out there to be like, look, Dylan, like just put Asim in your roster, and that's going to help you guys get to the next level. And it was a move that many might have considered to be a good idea. Now they're executing it. Should they have done it a bit earlier? Possibly. But at the end of the day, this is another interesting opportunity here for Asim. Now, this meme I thought was pretty out of pocket, but it's got to be said. There's been 5 years of the league, and Asim has now been on 6 CDL teams. Because it's these 5 and the new Subliners that he was on during the Cold War season. So what's next for Asim? Because if this doesn't work out, if he fails to deliver here, we know that historically he's better at the start of the season than he is towards the ends. If he can't put it together, if he can't put together better stats than Purj can, or the team doesn't improve, then, you know, what does it mean? Is this one of Asim's final chances? Now, you might have said that for previous situations, but he's still there. But this is Vegas, right? And historically, Legion is that organization that if it doesn't work out on Legion, you're probably not getting a chance elsewhere. I feel like Asim should be okay, but I think this will be quite telling for whether the narratives around Asim are actually going to be true, or whether that's not going to be the case and he can overcome some of them. So very much intrigued your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. This was pointed out as well because Asim back in the league, whenever Vegas play Boston, that's going to be massively exciting. But also Boston play Rocker soon, which is the Beans versus Gunless drama series that's coming up in a few days' time. So very much intrigued your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Hit marker, y'all depend on tough on record. In my city, it was friend zone. I'm the hit marker. Y'all depend on tough record. In my city, it was a friend zone. What that means? Hit marker. Wait, he got a hit marker? Rolling